fun. I've been able to sit in on lots of presentations over the course of time to talk a little bit about how we do things and kind of, you know, how things work. The slide here is kind of the things that I plan to talk about here over our next time, just to give you an idea, talk a little bit about getting ready, talk a little bit about your brand, spend a little time talking about cover letters, talk about resumes, talk about a whole bunch of different interviews, talk a little bit about negotiation, talk, you know, at the end, you know, the big question about fit, and then we'll, like Ben said, we'll try to leave some time at the end to see what questions folks might have. So with that, like I said, like Ben put it out there, if folks have questions as we're going along, please, in your chat box, feel free to send them along, and we'll respond to them if it fits, or we might hold them and wait till the end. We'll just kind of see how that goes. All right, with that, we'll just kind of jump into it, and we'll talk about what it means to be. Whoops, I think I went too far. I got so excited. Talk about being ready. The one thing that I find with lots of different folks is, even in your current position, even if you're not job searching next month or next week or later this semester, you always need to be thinking about what's next. You always need to be thinking down the road, always looking at different job postings and different things that are out there, and think about planning your career and what are those next steps and how to get there. And the one thing that I find is there's some people who are pretty good at getting ready for what's next, but they don't keep their resume up to date. I've talked to a couple individuals as I've put this together in the last couple of weeks, and I've found that I would say of the 5 or 6 people I talked to, 3 or 4 of them didn't have updated resumes. They hadn't touched it in 2 years or in 3 years or in a year or things along those lines. And what I tell folks is you always need to be ready, because you never know when that dream job is going to pop up. You never know when you might get asked to participate in a committee or a different opportunity, and they're going to want an updated resume. So you always need to have that resume up to date, ready to go, because again, you never know when that perfect job or that next thing that's coming up. So you need to be ready. You can do that in lots of different ways. I've worked with some folks who, when something comes up, if they're added onto a committee or they do a presentation or they get a new responsibility at their job, within days they go and update their resume. There's other folks who do it on a monthly basis. Some people do it semesterly. I myself try to do it on a pretty regular basis to try to make sure that it's reflecting kind of what's going on in my world of my current responsibilities. Because things that you've already done in the past, those are the static things. It's keeping up with kind of where you are and kind of what's going on. One of the things that you really need to do as you're getting ready for the job search and you're thinking about what's out there is you need to know yourself. You need to do a self-assessment and really think about, okay, I'm in a job and I'm an area coordinator and I really want to be an assistant director, or I'm a hall director, but I really want to get into the marketing side, or whatever it may be. You need to be thinking about where you want to go, but you also need to know that if I want to go there, if I want to get involved in marketing, or if I want to get more heavily involved in facilities, I'm going to need to brush up my skills. I'm going to need to get there. Where at the same time, you might say to yourself, I really love student housing, but I don't really like this thing called on-call. I'd really like to have a position that doesn't have on-call. And so when you're looking for jobs, you need to recognize that if you're done being on-call, only look at jobs that don't involve on-call. Hopefully that makes sense. And this is typically at a presentation where I would stop and say, does that make sense? And I'd look for people to have head nods. So I'll nod for you. And my humor seems to be falling on the ground because I can't hear anybody chuckle. So I'm going to keep going and just kind of laugh to myself. But anyways, as you really need to know what you like and what you don't like. As like I said in the slide, that fit is the key to success. If you're one of those people who loves it, you don't like it when the temperature gets below 60 degrees. then Wyoming probably wouldn't be a place for you. You know, you're not going to fit in the Wyomings or the Dakotas or Montanas or the Ohios or different places. But if you're somebody who doesn't like the temperature to give above 80, then Arizona, New Mexico, those aren't going to be the places for you. So you need to kind of figure out, maybe you're somebody who's always worked at a private institution and you feel comfortable with that. Or on the flip side, you've tried on the private school and it doesn't quite fit you right. Or you've worked at a large state school and that works well. Or you really just need to continue to figure out what it is that you like and what it is you don't like. So when you begin to look for that next step job, you're going to be building on kind of where you want to go, but you're only going to be looking at things and at places where you want to go in some of the positions. You might be open to anything and everything. You know, maybe working in Saudi Arabia or in Qatar or somewhere else internationally might be for you, and it might not. But again, you need to kind of have an idea of what that would be for you. The one thing is, I know a lot of times that we all get ahead of ourselves sometimes. We see a job and we start projecting ourselves out there about looking at what maybe cost of living is and some of those different things. And we start to project ourselves out there. I think what I would say is getting yourself ready. You need to still stay grounded in currently where you are. You know, like I put it in here, you can't turn down a job you've not been offered. So you need to, you know, kind of stay in the moment and not get too far ahead of yourself. You know, it's one of those things that there's some literature out there that talks about you really need to have a strong career well-being, because what that's going to allow you to be is a high-performing team member, and then for you, in a lot of cases, as you move up the organizational chart, you're going to be supervising folks, and for you to be able to build a good team, your professional well-being needs to be in a good place, and a lot of the ways you can do that is, again, finding a place that fits, a place that means something to you. So that's something. Talking to some of the folks in the search firms that are out there looking at different things. What they recommend is you really need to be someplace for 3 years, because the first year is the year where you're learning, the second year is the year where you're able to implement kind of what you've learned, and the third year you're really able to round out that experience and to say, you know what, this is good, but I'm ready for something more. And I know that has been that conversation about, you know, is 2 or 3 or 5, what's the optimum? But, you know, they pretty much stayed pretty consistent to say that 3 years is pretty good. That's not to say you can be somewhere for a couple years and really recognize that the fit and your career well-being aren't well and you need to move on. But generally speaking, you really need to think about, you know, 3 years. The other thing is that I know a lot of folks, as you move up in the rank, if you're an area coordinator or assistant director or anything, you just need to understand that job searching and things across the country, it is pretty transparent. It's transparent, and the moment you upload that resume up onto somebody's HR system, you're searching. It might only be one job, but you're searching. And it's funny, I've talked to some folks recently, and they said, well, I'm not really searching. You know, there's just this one job, you know, I'm interested in. No, you are searching. You're in a job search, and that's okay, but you need to understand and recognize all those things that come with it. That doesn't mean you need to tell all your staff that you're job searching and make, you know, post it on, you know, lots of different places, but you need to recognize that you're in a process, and you need to, you know, kind of go forward. One of the things I always talk about with folks is that once you're in, you're all in. You know, it's not like kind of being kind of pregnant. You're in a search. You are there, and it's kind of going on. And you know, and I know the one bullet there about leveraging your current position. There are some people who apply for other jobs just to see how things are going on how they might be able to increase their value in their current state. We say this in professional athletics all the time. Higher education, not a very ethical thing. I would not recommend that folks go down that path. It is one of those things that could really bring some pretty bad things to your record if you were to go down that path. All right, things are moving. So, all right, continue. You definitely need to be mindful of your surroundings as you're getting ready and different things like that. Where you're talking, who you're talking about, where you're talking about conversations and different things. You really need to think through that as you're going to get into a search. Make sure your voicemail messages are professional, they're polished. It's one of those things that you really need to think through, whether that's, some folks still have, answering machines. I know I'm old school. I still have some of those things. But your voicemails, make sure that they're prepared. A personal story, when I was a young professional, I was in a building that had lots of fire alarms, and I thought it would be funny during one of the fire alarms to record my message. It was really interesting when I talked with one of my potential employers when they said, yeah, I called you and left you a message, and that was a very interesting answering machine message, and that was probably 25 years ago. And when I see this individual, they still bring it up. You want to be memorable, but not always. That's not a good way. The other thing is when you get into the process, think about where you are. Think about the noise. Think about all the other distractions and things like that. You may be really excited that you're getting a call from a school or things like that, but make sure you're in a place where you can fully engage, give them 100% of your attention, and the background surrounding, noise works. I live in Wyoming. We get a little windy up here. I was just walking between buildings here today. That would have been a terrible place for me to engage in conversation with folks because they couldn't hear me because of the background noise. So you just need to think through some things like that. All right, as we continue, you might be thinking about your brand. What does that mean? I know we talk a lot about marketing brands and all these different things. I think everyone recognizes that Coca-Cola is the #1 most recognized brand in the country. And you hear Xerox, you think of or Band-Aid and some of those types of things, recognizable brand. Well, each of us have our own brand. And it's one of those things that's never too early or never too late to think about that brand, depending upon where folks are in their job search process. And really kind of what your brand is, these questions is really for you to think about is, what do you stand for professionally? What are the things that at the end of the day that you would say, this is what I'm all about. This is why I'm a student affairs housing professional. This is it. Kind of what's your niche? Is there a certain group that you work with? Are you great with training? Are you great with selection? Do you work well with athletics? Are you somebody that works well with custodial staff? I mean, kind of what's your niche? Where are your skills and expertises? It's what are those things that kind of looking at the strengths finder, where do your strengths lie? That apply that to your work setting. What are your expertises? Again, what do you do well, and what's at the root of all this? That's the one thing as you're developing your brand and trying to polish that brand and develop it, because it's a living, breathing thing that's going to represent you for your career. And again, if you're a new professional, been doing it a couple years, or you've been doing it 20+ years, like myself, your brand is your brand. You can always make it better. And the thing is, we always want to be careful, is we could always make our brand worse too. So we need to be careful kind of what's out there as we're building our brand. One of the things is maybe if you're a young professional or even maybe somebody in the middle, I'll pick on Ben. Maybe there's a place that he wants to go. Maybe his goal is to be a senior housing officer or to be a vice president or a dean of students. And that's where it goes back to the very beginning, having a plan, knowing what you want to do. How can you go about developing that specialty? How can you go about getting those extra skills, getting those extra experiences, and doing some of those types of things? Now's the time to start laying the groundwork. As you're in the middle of a job search, it's going to help you in that next. It's going to help you a little bit. But if you start working on those things now, start working on your brand, when you go through either the job search now or when you go through in the future, you're going to be able to put some things out there. And then when you do talk to those potential employers, you're going to be able to show, these are my interests, these are my expertises, and this is how I got it, and this is how you can sell it. And one of the things that I think we all need to do is we need to have that elevator speech. Just a quick, it's to the point, it's brief, it's concise, it's on point. It sells your current position. It talks about your institution. You need to be able to just in a brief couple sentences define who it is and what you do and why you do it. I know, for example, what I would say is, I currently serve as the executive director of Residence Life Dining Services at the Wyoming Union at the University of Wyoming. We house about 3,000 students on campus, have the opportunity to interact with an overall campus population of about 10,000. And what we really strive to do is to engage students in our local community, in our university community, and really, as a predominantly first-year campus, move those folks along. I might stumble here or there, but that's in a sense of who I am and what I do. I'm sure those of you could sell yourselves maybe a little bit better, but you need to be able to have that speech. In my head, I always think about, talking to my mom. How can I give my mom in a nutshell for her to understand exactly kind of what I do and what I'm about? So if that kind of helps you, put that together, that could help you. All right, looks like we're moving on to cover letters. Cover letters are interesting things. As an employer, of looking at probably thousands upon thousands of cover letters, what I can tell you is that cover letters can work. From my own personal experience, they can work for you, but they can also work far, far against you. Because there's a lot of folks who want to take everything that's in their resume and dump it in their cover letter. It's not what I'm looking for. Kind of the points that that I have up here is your cover letter is about emotions. Your data, think of it this way. Think of it as a qualitative and qualitative. The qualitative piece of your application is your emotional cover letter. That's where you're going to try to sell me on why you're the right person for the job. You're going to customize it to my campus and talk about different things at the University of Wyoming or at the other schools that I've been at. And then the quantitative piece is your resume that says I did this, when, and with how many, and this, and we did that, and we did that, and you really need to think about it. And the one thing that I also put about cover letters is I'm not sure if I put it in my slides or not. The worst way you can get yourself in trouble is to not proofread your cover letter and have the wrong words or misspellings or different things like that. If there's a way that I've seen candidates drop out of pools extraordinarily quickly, it's for little things like that. And when you think about it, a cover letter or a resume should absolutely never have any typos at all. Ever. It's not saying that I haven't, because I've done those things. But for as many people as we have who could who could proofread and do things like that, you should never have any of those. I've seen great candidates get tossed out of pools because of simple spelling, simple grammatical errors. And again, those are things that you don't want to do. But again, I'll get off that. Getting back into cover letters, again, this is the time for you to sell and to put things out there and to really explain, why you're the right person. And again, like I'm saying, we all want to feel special. You want to feel special as a candidate. I want to feel special as an employer. I want to know that you care about my position, that you care about my institution, that you're interested in what my mission statement is and what my vision statement and all those things that I have on my website. Those are the things that basically separate the pack, or you cut the herd a little bit if you're able to put some of those things. But like I said, you need the search committee to feel that you're the right person for the job. And that's conveyed through the cover letter by the way that you address the things that I have in my posting. That, these are the important things, and those are the things that you demonstrate, how that resonates with your experience, how you're excited about that. What is it about draws you to my institution? Because again, all this is about beginning that relationship, That's what a cover letter does. It begins to begin a relationship between the two of us. And I think most of us would agree the relationships we like best are the ones that are nice and that are warm, that are comforting. You know, it's kind of like a nice big hug. That's kind of the relationship you want to start building with your cover letter. Things that are cold and very overly, I'd say overly precise and just, you know, not a whole lot of feeling, and it seemed like you could use the same cover letter for every single thing, doesn't necessarily make me feel good. And I'm sure we've all received form letters before. It doesn't, you don't feel special. And this gives you the opportunity to do that. Again, talking to some of the experts out there, 2 pages may be appropriate depending upon the, you know, your career. You never go beyond 2 pages. Absolutely never. I'm chairing a search here on our campus, and we had a candidate for an upper-level position submit a 7-page cover letter. 7 pages! Good gracious! That did not go over well with the committee. That's way more than it should have been, particularly when they were redundant with things that were in their resume. So keep it concise. Keep it, you know, really focused on talking about why you're the right person and why the things that we're looking for, you can bring all those things to the table. That's an important piece. Did I go too far? No, we're good. Moving on to, I think we're moving on. And it went back to me. Sorry about that, folks. Moving on with a resume. And again, recently I had a chance to talk with Ellen Heffernan, who is the executive partner for Spellman & Johnson search firms. Most of you have probably heard of Spellman & Johnson, and some of these things were things that I've heard Helen say in the past, I've heard her say recently, and they're truly important things, particularly from an employer perspective. Have your address on top of your resume. It's very important. You should have your address on your cover letter too. You should have your name and your address and all those other on the cover letters, because when you because I just reviewed 6, like I'm talking about the other search I was in, I just reviewed 60, and it's very frustrating for me to have to flip, you know, whether electronically 2 or 3 pages in to have an idea, again, who this individual is, or if I have hard copies to go 3 or 4 pages to find it. But have your address there. List an email, and I know folks have gone back and forth whether you use your personal email, whether it's a Yahoo or a Gmail or whatever, or you use your work. The general practice these days, use either one. Again, make sure your email is appropriate. If it's a personal one, like sexypants22 at gmail.com, probably isn't the kind of message that you want to get out there. But regardless of what email you use, whether it's your work address or your personal address, you need to make sure you're checking that regularly. Don't create one just for your search process, but then forget that you have it. You need to be able to put something, that's out there. The phone number that you put on there, you need to clarify whether that's a cell phone, whether that's a home phone, whether that's your work phone. I would recommend to use your cell or your home and not your work, particularly if there's other people who might screen your calls by chance. I know even when I was a graduate hall director a long time ago, people would call my apartment, then the phone would automatically rotate to the desk. I don't necessarily want, I didn't really want my front desk dealing with, my work-related calls. Again, you might want, we're going to talk a little bit about involving your network and some things like that. Your front desk maybe isn't the best place for the folks to be in the mix of that. Your resume, put it in chronological order. Put it in chronological so it clearly is the most present up front, and then it kind of works back. One of the things that I would say as an employer, and I've heard this from lots of folks, is you really need to lay it out in a way that it makes sense. Folks who do functional resumes and say, these are the areas that I've done things and different things, I want to know in what job and how long you did it and some of those different things. So put it in chronological order. One of the other things that I've heard and Ellen talked about is spend a couple lines talking about your institution, because not everybody might know what Brigham Young is, or you might not be in Provo, but you're at a campus in Hawaii or a different campus. You don't want people to make that guess. And some of us might work at institutions that either we don't know enough about it. So just a couple quick lines. It's a private institution with an enrollment of, I would put the University of Wyoming in a, on-campus population of 10,000 students, housing with 3,000 beds. Something along those lines that kind of talks about a public institution, the number of beds and things like that. And it was really interesting hearing Ellen say for folks who, particularly housing folks like us who don't talk about the number of beds that they manage or the number of beds on their campus. We just have this nebulous, we manage things. This is data. Folks want to know data, and this is, to make decisions, you want to definitely include that, because what happens when you don't include those things, you get tossed out. And the whole process between your cover letter and your resume is to get you to the interview. So you don't want to be tossed out for any reason, in particularly because of, like I'll say again, spelling and grammar, and for missing some different things. It talks about put the meat. That's why you want to go chronological. You want to go with what your most current job is and what you're doing. You want all that on the first page. I can tell you, I've been doing this a long time. I've talked to lots of people who've done this. People who do this a lot probably spend less than a minute, and you've probably heard this from your career centers, less than a minute on your resume, and where they hit most, just like on most websites, it's on your landing page, which is the first page of your resume. That needs to have the bulk, the meat of what you're doing right now. That's what you need to sell. So that needs to be there. And in particularly in past jobs, and this is something that I'm not as good at, but I need to change for myself, is the things that you've accomplished. Talk a little bit about the things you've done, but if you've been able to, win a regional award for a program or Hall of the Year or whatever that might be, those are important things that, you were able to turn something around. List those accomplishments, because again, this is the opportunity. You have a little bit of real estate to really sell your story, to sell the data, and this would be the time to do some of those things. In resumes, again, give specifics. Use data. Don't use general statements. Talk about specifically what you do. Talk about, you manage a budget of X number of dollars and things along those lines. And a lot of people will come back and say, well, that's not a lot of money. But what you're telling me is that you're able to do all these programs with only $2,000. But that tells me that you're cognizant of the money, it's just didn't manage it. Or I managed 22 RAs or things like that. So the more specifics you can put in your resume, and the better it can tell your story, the data can tell your story. Again, we make data-driven decisions all the time in everything that we do, and that's something that we want to continue to do. You want it to, what you want is for me as an employer to read through this and give you yeses. The one thing, and I've seen this across the board, the recommended is for APA style. I think most everyone knows kind of what that is. If not, you can go out and get some books and some literature. But any publications that you have, any presentations, any university or community service that you want to put on there, any committees, whether it's campus or regional or international, and any honors you want to put that in APA style, because these are all important things that folks want to see. Like for me, I would say attending a conference is nice. I wouldn't put it on my resume. Serving on an AIMHO committee, I suggest everyone who's not on a committee, get on a committee in the future. Great networking, great way to meet other colleagues, great way to give back to your profession, and a great thing to put on your resume. So again, those are the types of things you put on there. That's far more telling to me, because that means you want to get involved. So those are some of the specifics that I'd lay out there for you. All right. So you've thought about yourself. You're ready. You've thought about your brand. You put that together. You've got some cover letters. You got some ideas. You got a good-looking resume. You see some job postings out there, and this is one of those things you want to do some research. You want to do your due diligence about the positions in the institutions and really think about, because like I was saying, once you're in, you're all in. Once you submit that resume, you really need to think about, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm about. And you when you put it out there, you really need to kind of have some ideas and know where you're applying. If you want to be on the coast of the state of Washington, applying at Washington State isn't anywhere near the coast. Or there's certain schools in California that you're like, oh yeah, I want to, I think Pacific would be great. Pacific's in Stockton. It's not on the beach. So you need to do some due diligence. And there are definitely some questions that you need to think about, both personally and positionally. Personal questions, with the different cities and different things like that. Can I live there? Can my partner, can my family live or work there, depending upon where you are in that realm of the world? When you meet people, can I live with these people as my supervisors, as my colleagues, as different things like that? You really need to begin to think about that. Laramie is a beautiful city. It's 30,000 people. It's the smallest town I've lived in probably 25 years. My two previous cities were over 1 million. So it was a culture shock to go from 1 million to 30,000, but I'm okay with that. Other people have come from those, and they've come here, and they're like, wow, I can't take it. But these are things you need to think about. It's not because Laramie is bad or things, and I'm just using Laramie as an example, so please don't think Laramie's terrible. But it's you need to think about it. And if you do have a partner, you do have a family, what are the other options for those kinds of folks? And positional questions, who was there before you and why'd they leave? Is it a new position that was newly created, or is it just a natural cycle of why people left or things like that? Because I think that will give you a lot of insight into kind of what's going on in other places. Talk a little bit about your network. Once you get out there and start figuring out, who can help you, and who can look for jobs. Because one of the things I know from talking with both Spellman and Johnson and William Spellman and a couple other searches, people do references of people that you have listed. They'll do reference calls of people that you've worked with. They'll do reference calls all the time. So it's important that your network is involved, because like one of the second bullet here, there really only are 2 degrees of separation, 3 maybe if you're talking different regionally. But folks know people, and people talk. So you really need to get, once you decide to get in that job search, work your network, talk about them, and it's one of those things that as you're building, there's really definitely some folks that could bring you along. And one of the things that kind of breaking down between a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. I'm gonna start at the bottom. The sponsor is somebody who could be on your campus, who you approach, one of your senior housing officers, and you express interest. Maybe they can get you at the table for different conversations. I know I in the past have brought hall directors and graduate folks and different things to construction projects or to different committees sometimes, because they've expressed an interest, to get them at the table, to get them some of that experience. So there's some times that you're going to need to take the initiative to get those folks on. A mentor is something that you need to choose, and the mentor is somebody who's going to give you that honest, direct feedback, who you're going to give their resume to, and they're going to say, this is terrible. You need to do this, change this, or no, you're not ready. You're a hall director, you're not ready for an assistant director job or an area coordinator. They're the folks who are going to give you that kind of feedback, and we all need that for them to be able to say, you're just not there yet. The coach is somebody who's going to give you feedback, who's going to say you can do this and help you here and help you there. Coaches are great, but they're not the mentor who are going to give us that really hard feedback. So I think those are some of the things that you need to think as you're thinking about your network. The other piece of your network, whether we liked it or not, is social media. It's one of those things that if you're not in LinkedIn, I highly encourage folks to use it, create that professional presence. I usually find younger professionals are a little bit better at this than some of the more senior folks, but you need to have that. If you haven't Googled yourself, do so. It's always interesting to see where you are and kind of what comes up, because trust me, folks are doing this. You might have done it for other colleagues, and when you're in a search, people are going to do this about you. Are you somebody that likes to tweet? It's a great thing. But again, what are the things that you tweeting about? Are you using your tweet to talk about things that might be on the edge and might people say, oh, this person has some, they've got some troubles here, some troubles there, things along those lines. Might not be a good thing. Might not be a good thing at all. So you're really going to want to be very mindful. And again, Facebook, I don't know anybody who doesn't seem to have a Facebook, but just be mindful and lock down as much as you can and really think about what you're posting on your Facebook. Again, you've probably heard all this and you've talked to different people, but it's important to mention. All right. Again, I go back to referencing something that Ellen talked about from Spellman and Johnson. And I love the way that she broke it down. She said there are really only 3 basic interview questions. And they're really looking at to determine your strengths, your motivation, and the determined fit. And if you really think about it, they're really asking, can you do the job? Will you love this job? And can I stand working with you? Those are real, and you think about all the different questions that you'll get asked, it all really boils down into this. And I remember when she said that, I started thinking about all the different pieces, and I was like, it really is. So as you're preparing and thinking about interviews, these are definitely some ways to think about how, as you're putting those responses together, and even from an employer end, I'm thinking about, yeah, that is right. I want to know what your history and your strengths are, and if you're somebody who's a self-motivator, and if I think you're going to be able to fit in with my current team. Talking about some of the different interviews out there, phone interviews, they're still occurring. One of those things that I've interviewed some folks and they're like, well, I'm not good on a phone interview. You know what? You need to get good at a phone interview. You need to learn to express your voice and project and to sound enthusiastic and to do all those things and really to sell yourself, because that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes is really what you have. And folks still use phone interviews, so you need to be able to do that so that your voice is going to be able to express the compassion that you have for students and the passion you have about the job and some things like that. You need to do it. Personal pet peeve, try not to use a cell phone, if at all, when you're doing phone interviews. Try to get a nice hard landline, because cell phone, I've had some folks where cell phone keeps dropping because where they are is the signal, or they're a pacer. I'm somebody, when I talk on the phone, I'll walk around. That is not good on a phone interview, particularly if you don't have a good connection. So you want to be careful, because particularly on a cell phone, you're pacing, and if you're particularly a live-on person, you live in a building with lots of concrete, as you know, that doesn't work well with cell phones. So you need to be careful. All right. Skype. This is something that is up and coming, and folks are doing a lot more. Again, these are some things that you need to put some things in place. Control your background. Make sure that you've got a clean background, because right now, if I had a webcam in my office, you'd see the stacks of different things behind my desk and the different things, and then people are going to, whether you want them to or not, are going to make value judgments. So the more clean, the more controlled. If you're doing it at home and you have pets, shut the door. I was just had a Skype for a different position. Later, this person two different candidates. One had a dog and the other one had a cat. And the cat was on a bookshelf and moving around behind them. And I swear, I watched the committee who was doing the Skype interview. They were paying more attention to the cat in the background than the candidate. And another one had a dog that kept running in and out. You'd hear the nails on the floor, and their tail kept hitting the curtains. Pretty distracting. I can say neither of those candidates made it beyond the interview phase. And that's not something that you want to do. Practice it. Have somebody, do it ahead of time, and have have your mentor or a coach or a colleague practice that with you. And again, it's one of those things that if you're in an environment that you only use Wi-Fi, good luck. Have a backup plan just in case, because it's one of those things. When technology works, it's the best thing ever. When technology doesn't work, we all go kind of crazy and pull our hair out. All right, airport interviews. Not sure, where folks might be in the process, and this is something that lots of, particularly once you get to that upper level of a director or associate director or things like that or above, you might have these. And what an airport interview is, instead of bringing folks to a campus, they're going to bring you to an interview. Say, if we were to do it in Wyoming, we'd probably all go down to Denver and get a hotel, would fly people in. I've participated in these myself. You fly in and you got an hour or so with the committee, and it's one of those things that, you're usually leaving early in the day. You're flying, so you're at the mercy of delayed flights and all those different things. You get there, you're in your suit and all that. You get your hour, and then they send you home. So really, an airport interview is truly about managing your energy level and being able to stay up, particularly if some different things are happening. They don't happen often, but they do occasionally. Placement exchange. Again, I own that. I have been involved with the placement exchange. And this placement exchange, it could be at Oshkosh, that I know is coming up. A lot of folks are going next week. Could be at the placement exchange that's happening in Baltimore, or it could be at ACPA's. They changed their name, and I can't remember the name of it. I apologize. That's going to be happening, I believe, in Indianapolis. So there are some out there. Some suggestions: attire, go conservative, go dark. Again, what you want to do, and this is kind of hard. When you put things together, you don't want to have an outfit that I'm going to spend more time remembering your outfit than I'm remembering your words. You want to look professional. You want to look conservative. You want to be able to. You don't want things that are flashy or distracting or anything that's cute or crazy on your tie or things. Because again, what in some ways, like I said on there, you want to suppress your style a little bit, because really what I want to remember are the great words that you're saying, not the gauge earrings that you have in, or the nose ring, or the different things like that. Because again, lots of people have different ideas, so you want to be able to present. You're going to have plenty of time to express yourself and to show your style and things like that. In this round, it's not something that I would recommend to folks to do. So you've gone through these different stages, and now we're on campus. And it's one of those things that everybody knows, similar to placement exchanges. Once you get to a placement exchange, it's not like Vegas where things happen in Vegas, they stay in Vegas. Once you're there at a placement exchange or on campus, the interview begins. And you need to recognize that. The moment you step on that plane and you arrive in, whether it's Indianapolis or Oshkosh or Baltimore or whatever campus that you're on, the interview process has begun. People are paying attention and walking. Clearly, when you're on campus, from the moment they pick you up to the moment they drop you off, that is an opportunity for you to sell your brand, to sell why you're the right person for the job. And if you think that people aren't paying attention and taking notes, you're crazy, because they are. One of the things is be prepared for the weather. And it's one of those things that folks, you might, have a really nice pair of high heels and it looks really good, but you need to be prepared that if it's snowing and icy and cold or super hot, you need to really think about and have some of that. One of the things also, if your campus interviews are like all the ones I've been on, they start you for breakfast and they run you through dinner. And it's going to keep you busy, and you're meeting with different people throughout the course of the day. So again, it comes back to energy management. You need to be just as fresh in the afternoon at 2:30, 3 o'clock that you are in the morning, because the people you're talking to then sometimes could be the decision makers and those crucial people. So you need to be able to manage your energy and to be able to do that. And again, your folks need, your answers need to be consistent throughout the course of the day. You might get asked similar questions, you could get asked the same questions. And again, if you think people aren't comparing at the end of the day, my friends, I can tell you that they definitely are. And again, remember, in an on-campus interview, this is just as much about you as it is about them. So you need to really be thinking about, what are the things? Can you see yourself sitting there? I want to talk a little bit about food. And one of the things that I would say, when you have breakfast, because you usually have breakfast interviews, lunch interviews, and dinner interviews, those are interviews. Not about eating. It's about interviewing. You still need to eat, keep your energy and sustenance and some things along those lines. That's why protein bars and different things that you can throw in your bag, in your pocket, and when you take a bathroom break to eat, some of those types of things are great. If you do go out to eat simple. Don't eat a lot. Don't eat crazy. Understand your manners. Understand about what it's the bread plate to your left, drink, your drink is on your right. If somebody uses the wrong, you need to understand some of those simple rules, because again, people are paying attention. I remember back when I was at the University of Arizona, there was a candidate who was spectacular throughout the course of the day. I mean, they were on the money. We were at dinner, and they made a comment that the people on our group thought was, I would say, culturally insensitive. Culturally insensitive. That candidate was gone. They were great, but it's one of those things that you need to be on the whole entire time. You need to be careful on what doors that you open, because there are questions I think we all know that we're never going to ask, but if you open the door, whether it's about a partner or marriage or kids or religion or anything along those lines, you've opened the door for people to begin to ask you questions. You might be perfectly fine with that. You might welcome that, but you just need to be mindful of it, and that's the piece that I want folks to think through. And a lot of times, I think back to, even when I was on campus interviews a long time ago, people might want to go out, at the end of the day for a drink or even a dinner. The best bet for you when you're on an interview, don't drink. If you do want to go out and things like that, get a nice tea, get a Coke, drink water. Don't go down that path. It's not a good thing. And probably the last thing that I'll throw in here is you don't wear if you're coming to a campus, don't wear their competitors' colors. That you might not be mindful of it, but trust me, people on campus, particularly who have rivals, you don't want to wear those rival colors. That'll set some people off. Real quickly, if you're an internal candidate, which again I'm not sure where folks might be, the one thing that I need to say for folks is act as if you're external. When it comes to, and it drives me crazy, when we have internal candidates, we say, well, do you have any questions for us? And they'll say, no, I know everything about you. You don't know everything about me. You might think you know, but ask me. If you were interviewing at a different place, you might have met me at an AIMHO, we might have done some different things, still ask questions. You still have to, all those same things, and I see internal candidates do that all the time. So you need to ask good questions. You need to act like you're an internal candidate. And if there's anything on your side is you understand the campus politics. So use those politics to your advantage. Use those to your advantage. I know I'm kind of running on time, so I'm pressing to get through here. I'm almost done. Only got a couple more slides to negotiate. You can always get into the negotiation. it is true that if you're at the lower level of an organizational chart, that entry-level hall director or that area coordinator or some different things like that, honestly, folks are usually not as, the items that can be negotiated are usually not as great as they are as you move up. I apologize, that is just the nature of our society, of the beast, so to speak. But that doesn't mean there aren't things to be negotiated. The key thing is you need to find out as you're talking about it, sometimes salary is negotiable. A lot of times it's fixed, particularly in our world. But there's lots of other things that you would be able to negotiate, whether it's traveling or pets or a variety of temporary housing, a variety of different things that are in there. And the one thing that we always talk about is when you're a candidate, when you're in a place, the school that you're at, the employer is never going to love you more than that moment when they're offering you a job, and you need to remember that and to really use that to your advantage as you're as you're going through everything. And again, one of the rules that you want to talk about is when you get into that negotiation, the rule that I've heard recently is you want to kind of go in with three things. One thing that really matters that you really like, one would be great, and one you could live without. It's not as important, but you want to go into some of those things, having an understanding what it is. Again, you may or may not have heard this before. Is once you get into that, that negotiation, that they talk about, the cone of silence, so to speak. Usually, the first person who talks is the one who loses. So you always want to try to start from a position of strength and to put things out there. And really, it's one of those things. Just because you have a job offer doesn't mean you always have to take it. You need to know. Again, it goes back to knowing yourself and knowing what are if the thing you absolutely need to have, if they can't give it to you, you need to be able to walk away. And that is really, really hard, but there is some reality to it. So you need to think about that. The next one is fit. And this is a really hard one. It really comes down to you and to what you're looking for and to what you need. And honestly, I can't tell you what that is. You really, one of the things that I always tell folks is you need to ask yourself, can you see yourself living in that city and working at that school for 3 to 5 years? Project and think through, can you see that happening? Does that seem, like something that you can do? And then, I'm one of those folks. I listen to my heart as well as my head when I make those fit decisions to say, how does it feel? Does it make sense? Are those two things in line? If they're not in line and you're starting to get that funny feeling ahead of time, you need to listen, because the last thing, again, I go back to is your career well-being is one of those 5 cores that you need to have in place for you to be successful. So with that, I know our time's pushed a little bit. Thank you for your time. We'll open it up for any potential questions. Ben, I don't know if you've got any or send any in. And I wish everybody luck with your next search.
Yeah, right now I don't have any hands raised or any questions. Does anyone have anything they'd like PC to clarify, or any other tips that he touched on briefly that you'd like him to expound on?
Is anybody still awake? Thanks, Ben. Well, ready.
Okay. Oh, wait, I've got a question.
All right.
Oh, it's a thank you. Caitlin Clark says thank you, PC.
Oh, you're welcome, Caitlin. If anybody does have any questions for me, my email is pcall@uwyo.edu. I'll be glad to talk to anybody offline if they have any questions too.
I am forwarding a couple questions to you, PC, that are coming in now. Can you see those?
Not yet. No, I don't. Oh, wait a minute. What are your thoughts on business cards and using those during interviews? That's one question that I see. I think business cards are great to give folks in different things. I would use them appropriately to hand out. A lot of times business cards go into a file, but to me, as long as the information on your resume, that's the piece that I go to. The other question I see here is for interviews that I've pre-scheduled with OPE, should I bring a copy of the cover letter and resume that I've already sent them? I would always bring extra copies, particularly if after talking about this you want to update or change some things or different, particularly your resume. I think it's never a bad thing to give people another copy, particularly if you've made changes to it, to say, I just want to give you, I made a couple changes, add some things, and you want to give it to them. I think, absolutely resumes, yes, because that could help you in that next phase. Cover letters really are to help you get to the interview. So I wouldn't necessarily upgrade those. And for whatever reason, I'm trying to see there's another question there, but I can't read it.
It's from Timothy. He's asking, would you be willing to look at his resume?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, again, if you guys haven't let us know what institution you're from and how many people are there with you, please do send us that information through the question box. Thank you for your participation. We will send this presentation out via email, and you're welcome to join us again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be addressing the job search from the employer's perspective. So if you want to peek into what's behind the curtain, you're welcome to you're welcome to join us tomorrow. Or if you're a mid-level person like me who does a little bit of hiring and a little bit of looking, it's nice to see that from both sides.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Here's another one from John Terry, PC.
What is the appropriate time to thank institutions with thank you notes? Is that the one you're seeing, Ben?
Yeah.
I go back and forth. I think after your interview, it's always appropriate either to send an email or a hard-written card. I think to me, an email is just as heartfelt as a handwritten card because you're taking the time to put it together. If there's a way that you can send it to all the people who might have been on the search committee, who might have interviewed you, whether it was a Skype or different things, because to me that gives you another opportunity to express your excitement about the job and to again show me you're working that relationship with the institution. So I think either like I said, handwritten card or an email works just fine. But I would say after each step of the process, I think that would be my recommendation. Anybody else?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for attending, for those of you who are still here. Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome. Thank you, PC. Thanks again for presenting today.
Absolutely. All right, everybody take care.
Bye, PC.